Hey, it's Brad from Biker Bites. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. I got the heads up early in the day that Indian was doing a demo of their 2017 lineup at my local dealership, so I hopped on the Heritage, rolled over to check them out. As you've probably gathered by now, I'm a Harley-Davidson fan, but I'm also a motorcycle fan in general, so I'll always take the opportunity to see what's out there. Let's start off by saying that this is not a full review. Anyone who slaps the word review onto a 20-minute test ride is kind of an idiot in my book, so I'll just say these are my first thoughts. Now, my daily driver, as I said, is a 2016 Harley Heritage Softail Classic. I bought it because I wanted something that was touring capable without A, breaking the bank, and B, weighing 900 pounds. That said, a few months into owning it, I'm already looking at trading it in on a road glide because the glide just matches my riding style a little bit better. So when I looked at the Indian lineup, I wanted to ride two bikes in particular. The Chieftain was first. Indian bills it as a cruiser rather than a touring bike, but it has a front fairing and it clocks in at $24,000. The second was the Roadmaster. It's similar in almost every flavor to the Chieftain, but it has a dedicated rear trunk and some other touring niceties as well. Now, I'm going to limit this video to talking about the Chieftain for a couple of reasons. First off, if you've ridden a Chieftain, you've essentially ridden the Roadmaster. Unlike Harley, which changes frames and suspensions from its cruising to touring models, Indian focuses more on the amenities. The Roadmaster is slightly more top-heavy due to the full passenger seat and trunk, but otherwise, the bikes are nearly identical in equipment and handling. Let's start off with the good stuff, because there's plenty of it. Out of the crate, the Chieftain feels like a bike that I could ride all day without having to modify it. Now, you can't really say that about most Harleys, and that's somewhat by design. Harley makes a ton of cash from its accessories. So many of the touch points on a Harley are made to be replaced. By that I mean seats and floorboards and grips. They're all the areas that make contact with your body first and frequently, and they're all the areas where Harley's accessory catalog runs very deep. Indian has some great accessories too, but it's obvious that their focus is more in selling a bike and then having some ways to customize it, versus the Harley method of selling you a bike that you essentially finish yourself. I don't know that either method is better than the other, but points to Indian for taking a different route. The next selling point for me is how light the bike feels. At 821 pounds, it's just a gnat's hair shy of being 100 pounds heavier than my Heritage, but it feels considerably lighter. I think that's likely due to the 25-degree front rake on the fork, but it significantly impacts how the bike handles too. We'll talk more about that in a moment. I'm a big fan of Indian's choice to do lower seat heights. I've got short legs, and I could easily flat-foot everything in the Indian lineup. The floorboards sit higher than my Harleys, but they're definitely not uncomfortable for me. Now, if you have longer legs, like a 34 or 36-inch inseam, it might be an issue. The 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system was gloriously well done. This is one gripe that I definitely have with Harley. The MoCo system is confusing on a good day, and as far as the software updates, well, they haven't really fixed the problems yet. The screen that I found myself using on the Chieftain was a 50-50 split that showed speed and gear and then some other information on the left while displaying my map position on the right. I found this to be an ideal mix for me and only rarely glanced at the analog speedometer. I loved the hard bags and the locking system. It works exactly like it should, and they're plenty spacious. There's also a great compartment on the dash for holding your phone, and while storage isn't abundant on the Chieftain, it's got plenty to make most folks happy. The Thunderstroke 111 engine is sublime. My demo ride had stage 2 cams installed. It gave it about 7 extra foot-pounds of torque, but across the board, the 111 just pulls for days with minimal effort. It's also buttery smooth at speed, and it still gives you enough of that kind of V-twin rumble, though, to keep us purists happy. The last big thumbs up for me is that adjustable windshield. Sometimes you want a little more wind in your face. Sometimes you're just trying to duck out of the rain. Having an easily adjustable windshield height means that you can have the best of both worlds on demand. I loved it. So now that we've talked about the good, let's talk about the not so good. I'll start with the 25-degree rake. While it does wonders for making the bike feel lighter, I don't know that I appreciate the choice so much when it comes to handling. There's a difference between bikes that feel like they want to turn and bikes that feel like they want to fall over. The Chieftain, for me, is in the latter category. It just never felt as stable as I would have liked. I'm also just not a fan of the control feeling. Everything on the bike feels mushy and delayed, from twisting the throttle to pulling the clutch, even both sets of brakes. Maybe the idea was to go for a more refined feel, but to me the end result was lacking in that firm response that gives you confidence in your machine. Some slight tweaks to the fly-by-wire throttle, a clutch adjustment, maybe a set of braided brake lines, that could all probably go a long way toward fixing the issues. The problem is that I don't want to feel that I need to do that with a new bike. Speaking of controls, I'm not sure sure whose hands Indian used to decide the placement for their infotainment and cruise controls, but it likely wasn't human. I've got sizable mitts, but it takes an uncomfortable stretch to reach the cruise control, and heaven forbid I want to change anything on the 7-inch screen other than using the flash to pass style button to flip through the different options. The entire control pod sits way too far out of reach, and it uses a gamepad-like styling that makes it even more difficult to use. The final thing that really irks me about the Chieftain is the fake flathead engine. Now, Lemmy over at RevZilla wrote a blog post about the issue. I'll link it down below. I wasn't sure what all the fuss was about until I saw it. Indian uses an overhead valve system, which means that those valve covers, they're not real. The ribbed heads, they're just for looks. And I get what Indian's trying to do by mimicking older styles, and they kind of match the brand's age and history, but it just comes off as a stretch to me, and it probably will to others as well. You have a fantastic, really modern, well-done overhead valve engine. Design something that looks great that showcases that engine instead of trying to make it look like something that it's not. On that note, I lied. I do have one more point, and it goes along with the fake flathead, so it just reminded me of it. I wish that Indian would pick a lane. That classically styled bike with the super techno infotainment system, it doesn't match, at least not in my eyes. The Dark Horse line, which gets stripped down to analog gauges, those work a lot better. And while I know it's just a preference thing, if I'm paying $24,000 for a bike, it better have some serious bells and whistles. I just wish that Indian did a better job of making them look less obvious. It's like a rolling contradiction, and it bothers me. The end result, I like Indian bikes a lot. And I'm no longer surprised as to why they have such a rabid following. They're great machines, but they're not the machine for me. I'll keep up with the brand because I think it's important to do so, but I'm still going to be flying my bar and shield for the foreseeable future. Thanks for tagging along. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and, leave a thumbs up if you would. Got a question or a comment? Drop it below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks. We'll see you next time.
Straight up missed second gear. Oh, man.